बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अस्सलाम वालेकुम। तो आज की इस वीडियो में हम ये सी सिम में जो आए हैं उनसे आज हम कुछ सवालात पूछने वाले हैं। ये द एवोल्यूशन ऑफ अ क्वाइट कमांड, इस बारे में हम ये सवाल पूछने वाले हैं कुछ। तो फिर चलिए बगैर टाइम जाए कि वीडियो को शुरू करते हैं।
Hey, how's it going?
हेलो, हाउ आर यू?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. What's on your mind today?
Okay, so today I'm just gonna ask you a few questions, some questions about the on the topic the evolution of a quiet command. So let's begin.
Ooh, the evolution of a quiet command. That sounds like a deep dive. I'm ready. Hit me with the first one.
Okay, so the first question is that what inspired you to explore the history of the word
Wait, hold on. Me? I think there might be a little mix up. I'm the one here to help you explore, but I didn't actually set out to study the history of the world on my own. I'm just a huge fan of the weird and wonderful things humans have done. Did you mean to ask what inspires you to dig into these topics, or were you thinking of someone else?
about the word which is used to make people quite SSHH like this word.
Oh, I totally get it now. You're talking about the actual sound we use to hush people.
Yes.
That is such a fascinating starting point. It's almost like a universal human signal. Where do you want to take this first?
Okay, so the first question is that where did the quiet command originally came from?
Let me look into that. It's wild how such a simple sound evolved, but it actually traces back to Middle English with a word like whist around the 14th century. The actual word shush didn't really show up until the early 1900s. Some people think it's so universal because it mimics the soothing sounds babies hear in the womb, or maybe it was just a way for early humans to stay stealthy while hunting. Does that feel like the right origin to you?
Okay, so the next question is that why do people, how has the meaning of changed over time?
That's a great question. I think it's shifted from being a purely functional tool, like literally keeping a baby asleep or staying hidden during a hunt, to like something more social. Now, it can be anything from a gentle reminder in a library to something that feels a bit dismissive or controlling, depending on who's saying it. I'm curious if you think the feels more like a helpful nudge or a bit of a shutdown these days.
Okay, so is this word used in every culture around the world?
Let me check. I have a feeling it might be common, but there are probably some really interesting exceptions. It's widely recognized in a lot of places, but it's not totally universal. For instance, some Spanish speakers might use hiton or a different S sound instead. Do you think the sound itself is what makes it work, or is it more about the intention behind it?
Okay, so are there languages that use a completely different sound instead of this word?
Let me dig into that. I bet there's some sounds out there that would sound totally weird to us, but make perfect sense in their own language. Like in French, they use chut, and in Polish, they say si, which is actually a shorter version of their word for quiet. Even in Estonian, it's a repetitive kus. It's kind of cool how every culture found its own way to make a noise that basically means stop talking right now, end quote. Do any of those sound more natural to you than a standard shh?
Okay, so why does this word sound so natural for asking someone to be quiet?
I think it's because that shh sound is a kind of white noise. It effectively masks other sounds and cuts through the noise without being as jarring as a shout. Plus, there's that theory that it mimics wishing babies here in the womb, which makes it feel instinctively calming or grounding. Does that make sense, or does it feel more like a biological flute?
Okay, so has the word always been associated with silence?
Let me look into that. I suspect it's almost always been about quiet, but it's not just a command. It's also deeply tied to comfort since it mimics those womb sounds. It's just as much about soothing a baby as it is about telling someone to be silent. It's like this weird crossover between a rule and a hug. And do you think that makes it feel more polite, or does the command part still outweigh the comforting part?
Okay, so why is this sound effective for signaling silence?
It really comes down to the acoustics of it because it's basically a constant stream of high frequency noise. It cuts through a room without needing a lot of volume. It's enough to get someone's attention, but it doesn't add to the very noise it's trying to stop, which is kind of ironic when you think about it. Does that sound right to you, or do you think it's more about the psychology of it?
Okay, so is this word is it really a word or an expression or simply a sound?
That's a really sharp distinction to make. Technically, it's more of a sound or an onomatopoeia because it's mimicking a noise rather than being a word with a complex root or a defined grammatical place. It's more of a vocal signal, like a sneeze or a gasp, that we've collectively agreed has a specific meaning. I'd call it an expression since it communicates a full idea without needing a vocabulary. Do you feel like it's too simple to be called a word?
Okay, so why do linguists classify sounds like this word?
Let me check on the technical side of that. I imagine they have a specific category for these, and they actually call it a voiceless palato alveolar fricative. Basically, it's a fancy way of saying it's a sibilant sound. They also look at it as onomatopoeia, onomatopoeia since it, bridges the gap between a real world sound and actual language. Does that sound like too much technical jargon, or is that the kind of detail you were looking for?
Okay, so why do children learn the meaning of this word so quickly?
I think it's because it's so visceral. They don't have to learn a vocabulary word. They're reacting to the sound and the energy behind it. Plus, it's usually paired with a very clear gesture, like a finger to the lips. So they get the message through sound and sight at the same time. It's almost like an instinctual piece of communication. Do you think it's one of the first rules kids pick up on?
Are there other words that communicate without using the actual words?
Oh, absolutely. Think about things like when you're thinking or ooh when you're frustrated. Even a simple even a simple tongue to show disapproval. There are all these little vocal shortcuts that carry a ton of emotional weight without needing a dictionary. Do you find yourself using those kinds of sounds a lot, or do you prefer to be more literal?
Can animals understand the meaning of this word?
That's such a cool thought. I suspect they might pick up on the tone more than the actual sound, but they can definitely be conditioned to it. Dogs, for example, are great at interpreting human emotion through voice. Some people even say wild animals might perceive a shh as a non threatening noise and calm down. Do you think pets have their own version of a shh for us?
Well, I don't know much about this. Okay, so another question I just want to ask you is that does the length of this sound change its meaning?
I think it definitely does. A quick shh is usually just a gentle nudge, but a long, drawn out shh can feel a lot more urgent or even a bit impatient. It's like the volume is the same, but the intensity changes. Do you feel like the longer the sound goes, the more it feels like a warning?
How does the tone of voice affect the meaning, affect the message behind this word? This word.
Tone is everything with this one. A soft, airy shh can be really comforting, like when you're soothing a baby or sharing a secret. But if it's sharp and loud, it stops being a request and becomes a demand. It's the difference between, hey, let's be quiet together and be quiet right now. Do you think a sharp shift is ever actually polite or is it always a bit rude?
Okay, so the next question is that can this word communicate emotions behind besides asking for silence?
I think it definitely can. Like we touched on earlier, it can be incredibly soothing and tender when you're comforting someone, but it can also convey a lot of tension, like when you're trying to hide from someone or you're in a high stakes situation where any noise could blow your cover. It's almost like the sound itself adapts to the mood of the room. Do you think it's ever used as a way to show intimacy? Like when two people are sharing a quiet moment?
So the next question is that is there any specific research on why people respond to this word?
Let me see what the research says. I have a feeling it's a mix of how our brains process white noise and those deep rooted instincts we talked about earlier. Research shows it can actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps the body relax and reduces stress. It's like a shortcut to a rest and digest state, allowing the brain to regulate itself and interrupt anxious thoughts. Pretty
Uh,
wild that a simple sound can actually change your physical state, right?
okay, so the next question is that when did people first start using this word?
If we're looking at the actual sound, it's probably as old as humans themselves, but the recorded history is a bit more specific. Like I mentioned earlier, it traces back to Middle English with Heiss around the 14th century, but the instinct to make a sibilant sound to signal danger or silence likely goes way back to prehistoric times. It's more of a biological tool that eventually got a name. Do you think we'd have invented a different sound if we had different instincts?
Okay, so the next question is that are there historical records mentioning this sound?
Let me check if there are any specific archives on that. So while we don't have a diary entry from a caveman saying, shh, the gesture of putting a finger to the lips actually goes back all the way back to Roman times. And there's actually a god of silence and secrets from ancient Hellenistic religion named Harpocrates, who's often shown with his finger to his lips. It seems like humans have been obsessed with the idea of keeping quiet for a really long time. Do you think we've always had a god for things like silence because it feels so powerful?
Are there how has the literature used this word throughout history?
Let me look into that. I imagine writers love using it to build tension, like that moment right before something big happens in a story. It's a great way to create a sensory bridge, making the reader actually feel the silence in the room. Beyond just the sound, authors often use it to symbolize things like isolation or even power and control. Do you think
Uh,
a written shh on a page feels as intense as hearing one in real life?
okay, so does this word appear in